Hi, Will. Can't see what I'm doing.
Please edit him in. Yep. Good.
Hi, Will. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the ETTO Comic Cast for July 2022.
Yeah.
July.
Correct.
It's actually July.
It actually is today.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. It's weird that we're like recording one on time. It's July 1st.
Kind of, yeah.
I feel this doesn't feel normal for us. A few other things don't feel normal.
Will's not here.
Yeah, Will is not here. We were just discussing. This is the first time Josh and I have done one of these solo pods together. Yeah. I normally have someone over here. It's funny when I edit these, I normally realize that I look at Will a lot more than I look at you.
It's fine. Will talks a lot more than me in these anyway.
But
He's got better thoughts.
Today I'm forced to look this way. I
go.
can't look that way. If I look that way, there's just nothing.
It's going to be so weird. This is my Udi drying.
It's just a drying Udi.
Mm-hmm.
They're a pain to dry.
They so are.
But yeah, Will has given us a little tiny bit of his thoughts. Less than any of you wrote your comments in because Will doesn't care. Doesn't care about the comic cast at all.
Not at all.
That's why he's not here.
Is it even less than Dion? Because Dion usually writes some real short.
It's more than
and sweet.
Dion,
Okay.
but less than anyone else.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, no.
I love Dion's.
Yeah.
Very short and sweet. They're my favorite.
Yeah, totally. No Dion this time either.
Oh no!
Yeah, I know. Very sad. Very sad.
Just after I've played favorites.
Yeah.
I've gotten everyone offside.
Truly tragic. Also, Will does care. He's got a sore tooth. So
Poor tooth.
by the time this comes out, tooth hopefully better, probably better.
Hopefully.
But, if not, send your love to Will and his tooth, because that tooth, not having a good time.
Naughty tooth.
Speaking of teeth, Thor has teeth.
He does.
And we're talking about Thor again, because
We are.
Thor 3? 4. Thor, oh no, not again.
Thor 4, the fourth Thor.
Thor for Thor.
Thor 4. The fourth Thor.
The fourth Thor movie
Yeah.
is coming out...
This week.
Yeah, wow, it's this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why we had to do this tonight.
In a couple of days.
This is why we had to do this without Will, because there was like no power through. We got to get it done. It crept up on all of us.
Yeah.
Yes, Thor Love and Thunder.
Oh, yes.
With Gore in Thor 4. So, great.
With multiple Thors as well.
Yeah, many Thors, Gore's 4s, Lore, hopefully not a bore.
Hopefully. And this issue has a Thor.
Yes.
But over 3
this one has
time periods.
3 Thors and 1 Gore.
Awesome. It does.
Yeah. And
3 Thors, 1 Gore.
I would say not much of a bore.
No.
Overall, this comic...
Overall.
Over Thor. Over Thor. All right.
Yep.
Overall, this comic, pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, I was saying to you beforehand, I think this is one of my personal favorites.
I think this was probably the first Thor comic I ever read.
Yeah.
And I was telling you just before, this was the first Thor comic I ever bought, the first Thor series I ever bought.
For me, this is also my second reading. I didn't start collecting back then. I started collecting a bit later than Josh.
Yeah.
But then I've always loved Thor as a character. So this is one of the comics I went to early because a lot of people were like, this is very good. It's a like top tier Thor comic. So I jumped into it a few years back and loved it. It's like possibly my favorite Thor comic. I'm trying to think if there's a better one, but I don't think so, particularly this storyline. Because as we'll get into, it's got a lot of the stuff I like. If you know Ben, you know the stuff I'm into. This is a comic for me. Yeah. But yeah, we both read it in an interesting format.
We did. Very different.
Yeah.
And almost caught us off.
Yeah.
God, we would have been ruined for this.
Yeah. So we chose issues 1 to 5, which is collected in a trade paperback. It's the start of the Gore the God Butcher story. There is more beyond this, which is obvious if you've read it. It does not wrap up. And so recently, Marvel have been adding these Infinity comics. Is that what they're called?
I think they're called
Infinity comics onto Marvel Unlimited, which are just, instead of doing the normal thing where you flick through the pages or flick through panels if you have the panel view on, they have just like a one scrolling comic. And so they started releasing like original comics for that last year. And then recently with like all the new Marvel Studios stuff coming out, they've been like, oh, we're going to go back and like the comics that they're based on. We're going to do Scrolling Infinity Comics.
It's a cool way to do it.
It is a cool way to do it. I've read a couple of the original ones when they first came out. I was curious about it. I really struggled to read them because it wasn't the way I was used to reading them, because I often flick through panel by panel when I read comics, and I don't know what it was about it just being continuous, but I found it almost stressful. I was like, I can't stop at a point. Like, I can't go back and look at the whole page. It's just like keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, okay. I get you.
But I was like interested in the idea, and I might go back and read some more of them now they've fleshed them out a bit more. But I hadn't read one of these like redone ones yet. Yeah, I was very curious to see how it was, and I think you mentioned it on a stream the other night that it was in that form, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to read this one in that form. Yep. Because I've read it before. The gore.
Yes. I love it.
And so, I was like, I'm going to go back and do it.
Nice.
Yeah, you thought you just said you thought it was pretty good.
I feel like I would like it more if there was a scroll bar to tell me how far through the comic I was.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. Because I'm like, that makes it stressful, because I finished reading these after Ben arrived. So, I was trying to get through them, and I had no idea how far away I was from the end, which that's stressful.
Yeah, totally.
Could go on infinitely, as the name suggests.
My major issue with it is the amount of empty space. It ends up with this weird thing where you're just seeing like 1 or 2 panels at a time and a bunch of text, and then there's so much empty space between them. And you kind of lose the structure of the page.
A little bit, yeah.
Which I feel like, in terms of the story, doesn't do a disservice to it, because you're still getting the story. In fact, it's almost better for the story because you're getting it in the order it wants to be told, which is sometimes a struggle with comics.
Yeah, totally.
But with the art, I think it actually does a disservice to it, because I spent most of my time reading it this time looking at just like white or cream color or whatever the random color was.
So are the other Infinite comics more like integrated and properly sort of together?
Because they're made to be one rolling strip. Most of them, I can't speak for all of them. I've only read a few of them. But the X-Men one, for example, that I started reading last year, had this cool thing where like a lot of it was set like going from like Earth to space. I think there was one bit where they like literally went in a spaceship from Earth to space. Yeah. And so you saw the like spaceship flying and like flying from Earth like into a space station, and it's all one rolling thing, and there's not these massive gaps in between.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think obviously when you tailor it for that, that's cooler. Other than that, I did like it, except for my major gripe, which is the thing that I had to warn you about.
Yep.
Which is, for some reason, obviously I mentioned we're doing issues 1 to 5. Split it up into 7 issues. 1 to 5 was 7 issues of an Infinity comic. Not even like half. Not even like, we're doing 10 and you're just getting half the issue. 7 issues. Very confusing. I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't been looking through everyone's notes that they'd sent in, and like Joshy had separated them issue by issue. And I was starting to look at them being like, these don't line up at all with what I'm reading.
How is Joshy getting this so wrong?
Yeah, totally. And I'm like, Joshy never gets it wrong. Nah. So I did a bit of investigating, and I very quickly realized that like I was at issue 3, but that was like issue 2 content that was going on there.
Yeah, right.
And so I had to go back and warn Josh and be like, he was like, I'm nearly done. I've got like 1 or 2 issues to go. And I was like, okay, but do you?
And I did not.
Yeah. I kind of went back after I realized this and looked at the places where they were stopping. I was like, this doesn't feel natural all this time. It's a baffling decision to me.
Yeah.
If I was to read this comic ever again, I'd definitely go back to the original way, I think.
Yeah, totally. Because we were also talking about like, what are we going to do with this overview and stuff, but it feels so much like a graphic novel. Like it feels like just one story that didn't exactly need to be split over multiple issues.
I almost wish they'd done one full scroll of all 5 issues. I mean, it would have been long, and it would have
freaking long,
induced the stress that we had even more so.
Potentially, But
yeah, let's jump into some facts, and then, as you just mentioned, we'll jump into like a summary of the issues overall. Let's say, afterwards. But Comic Curiosities returns, or really now its name is just relatively permanently Joshy's Context Corner.
He does all the research for us.
He does all the research for us. It's very good research. The writer for this one just quickly, Jason Aaron did the last Thor comic we did a couple months ago.
Oh, yeah, right.
So we don't have a full bio for him. But instead, Joshy has supplied us with some fun facts.
Nice.
So we have 4 fun facts. Thor fun facts. Gore fun facts.
Gore.
Fun fact number 1. Writer Jason Aaron's first superhero comic book was the August/September 1979's World's Finest Comics. It was part of DC's Dollar Comics line, 68 pages long with 5 feature stories. In his newsletter, Aaron says, I fell in love with these books, in part because they didn't just give me one story, but instead gave me a taste of an entire world of characters and adventures and history that was out there waiting for me. The sort of gargantuan super world that would come to consume a large portion of the rest of my life. So, I think what that means, because I did initially read this and be like, first superhero comic book, he worked on that. But then I remembered last time we chatted about the first one he worked on was the Wolverine thingy. He like put his name in a...
Yeah.
You remember he put his name in a thing and then did a thing and then he got the thing.
Won the thing.
But no, this is the first one he read.
His first superhero comic book that he obtained.
Yeah. But
1979.
interesting, he is a DC boy. Originally.
Totally.
And is now basically just does Marvel Comics from what I know. Fun fact number 2. Jason Aaron on the design of the villain in Thor Love and Thunder. As the guy who co-created him along with Esad, I'll just say that it wasn't Gore's nose or lack thereof that made him the tragic and deeply disturbed god butcher that he was. Trust in the face of Christian Bale. Need I remind you, it's a pretty goddamn talented face. I was initially annoyed at the lack of flat nose and the lack of tentacles that were going on with the God Butcher.
Sure.
Because I always loved the God Butcher design.
Yeah.
But...
Very, Voldemort-esque.
Voldemort-esque with a little bit of, like, venom going on.
Yeah.
Which ties into his backstory and stuff. I definitely... Oh, a little bit like Eldritch Horror as well going on with him, I feel like. It feels a little bit, like, inspired by that kind of stuff.
And it works with the art style, too. Because the art style is very, like... painted.
Yeah,
so it's very like pastel paints.
Yeah. But the more and more I see of this film and I see Christian Bale in it, the more I'm like, no, this makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, cool.
This makes a lot more sense for the kind of tone the MCU is. And also everything I've heard. I mean, you can never really trust the previews of these films, but everything I've heard have been like, yeah, Christian Bale's like the best Marvel villain. So we'll see if it lives up to that, because that's like a high billing. You got like Thanos in there.
Yeah.
You got Baron Zemo. You got like some very strong performances.
Absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see that.
After reading this and knowing that Love and Thunder is based on this, it's such a weird contrast.
It's so weird. Again,
I'm so confused about what this is going to be in the film.
Yeah, I said we'll talk about it later because Will's kind of like talked about that side of thing as well. But I am also very, very confused. So we'll have a bigger chat about that later.
Yeah.
But let's jump into fun fact number 3. When Mighty Thor was starting up, Walt Simonson, a former Thor writer who doesn't really know Jason Aaron, wrote to him and said they'd been on Thor message boards and people were up in arms about the new Thor. This was Jane Foster, the one we did a couple months ago. And it had made Simonson laugh because they'd said the exact same thing when Simonson first did Beta Ray Bill. Aaron was grateful for that reassurance. So that's nice. It's like that's a old writer kind of taking the new guard under his arm.
Just being like, it'll be fine. I have this too.
Yeah, totally.
Just chill. Everyone will love it.
Fun fact number 4, the last Jason Aaron fun fact. The reason it took 8 issues to reveal who Mighty Thor was in part structural because they knew ahead of time that Secret Wars was coming, which was going to cancel and reset every book. Aaron had fun playing with the mystery part of the book, knowing it was Jane and teasing out who this person is, who is Thor. But Aaron knew that the main meat of the book was what would happen post-reveal, and that's what she's going through and where it's going to take her. That was the story they wanted to tell. It's cool to know that he kind of got to play around with it a bit because he knew stuff was going to get reset. He could kind of like mess around with the timeline, that kind of thing.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
Good stuff. Jason Aaron, what a legend.
Yes, indeed.
I do see his name pop up a bunch on like just Marvel Comics in general.
Yeah.
Just keeps turning up.
He's a prevalent dude.
Good
Prevalent?
Yeah, it's fine.
I feel like I was going to say I was going to say benevolent, and then I ended up saying prevalent, and then that wasn't actually the word I wanted to say. There's another word that I wanted to say.
It's funny because the word benevolent turns up a lot in this comic. Or a couple of times at least.
It does.
Yeah. And it's always referred to in terms of like a god.
Prevalent.
Especially like as a church boy.
Prolific. That's the word I wanted to say.
Prolific, that's the one. Yeah, gotcha.
But prevalent and benevolent, probably both correct about
I would
Jason
assume so.
as well.
Yeah. I will also say the word benevolent always to me sounds like a bad thing.
It does,
I don't
but
know why.
it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I don't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But
because it's got Ben in it.
It must be.
Yeah.
It's the only,
We're terrible.
It's got to be it. It's got to be it.
Yeah.
All right, who's our artist?
Our artist is Esad Ribic. Now there was a cut earlier in this comic cast which you wouldn't have seen. It would have been absolutely seamless. It was because I was checking because I thought he'd showed up in a previous comic cast.
Okay.
And I hadn't noted it down. He has. Ooh. But he wasn't an artist. He was a cover artist on the House of M run. All 8 issues. Do you remember those covers?
Vaguely.
They definitely have the same kind of muted tones and painterly styles. I remember us talking a lot about them in that original comic cast. So he did the covers back then. Awesome. So and now he did the full art on this particular comic. And the other one that I know him very prominently from was the current ongoing Eternals run, which is very similar art style, obviously. It's the same guy doing it. But it's got those like muted, painterly kind of tones and styles that it's quite unique, I would say, almost to modern comics art. You don't see a lot of stuff where the color is like this toned down. The stuff doesn't really pop as much. There's a lot more focus on like I'd say there's a lot more focus on like detail and expressions. Yeah,
definitely. It feels very like 2000s.
Yeah.
Like kind of early to mid 2000s to me.
Yeah, totally. Well, speaking of 2000s, by the early 2000s, according to Joshi, Ribic worked on a bunch of sporadic X-related titles at Marvel, including House of M. So he was that was a lot of when he's like early discography. Again, that's the word that popped into my head. We'll go with it. His early discography, artography, perhaps. I'm nailing the words tonight.
So good.
But yeah, that's what a lot of his earlier like comic book work was based on. He worked on the 2004 Loki miniseries, a few of the Marvel Knights books, which are like this weird alternate reality thing that went on. I think there was like a 1604. There's like a weird comic that's a part of that.
I remember that.
That's a cool comic. I liked that one.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. And then he's collaborated with Jonathan Hickman, another big Marvel writer.
Yep.
Kieran Gillen is doing the Eternals one with him right now. And he's about to work on the upcoming 2022 AXE Avengers X-Men Eternals Death to the Mutants series.
Ooh.
Yes.
That sounds super interesting.
Yeah, it's their big crossover event they have coming up. Anyway, but yeah, that's kind of like the stuff Ribic's done. Joshy's got some more fun facts for us.
Nice.
Well, technically, I said it was the last Jason Aaron fun fact earlier, but this one is a Ribic and Aaron fun fact.
We have a fifth. Tried. Go, read it. Read it, Ben.
Thor, God of Thunder, was Ribic and Aaron's first Asgardian collaboration. They'd previously done one-shot comics together like Dark Reign, The List, Wolverine, that's the name. But Ribic would return for the last of Aaron's Asgardian books with Thor in the title as one of the main artists and inkers in the 4-issue wrap-up series King Thor Volume 1, set after the events of War of the Realms. The King Thor miniseries was written while Aaron co-wrote another Asgardian-themed series, Valkyrie Jane Foster Volume 1, which was cancelled after 10 issues and replaced with Aaron's final Asgardian sister series, the 5-issue Mighty Valkyries. I have read one of those.
Okay.
The Mighty Valkyries series, which I think was either 2019 or 2020 series, like started one of those years, 2021. Maybe one of the pandemic years. They all blur together.
Sure.
But that's fun. It's focused mainly around Jane Foster and some other Valkyries as well. And a bunch of their backstories. It's actually how I learnt Jane Foster became a Valkyrie after she gave up being Thor.
Okay.
But clearly there's a whole series about this.
Yep.
And yeah, so it's kind of cool that they separated a bit. Jason Aaron and Russell Dorderman worked on a bunch of the Jane Thor stuff.
Sure.
And then Ribic kind of came back to tie it all together with the big King Thor.
Yeah.
Big King.
It's cool when you see like writers and artists of a prolific comic series that like benevolent series that like people really liked. It's always cool to see them like come back together and do something
totally
different, or like, you know, be able to continue on, I guess, part of that story that they would have started in a sort of way.
In my head, I have this little bit of curiosity about whether Jason Aaron, because he wrote Thor comics from like 2012 to 2019. It's a lot of time. I kind of wonder if he had like one of those, like the famed board that Kevin Feige probably has of all the story. I want to know if Jason Aaron had one of those boards for all the story, and it was always going to wrap up with these two like coming back together for the story stuff.
That would be sick.
Yeah. I reckon in my head canon, he had one of those boards. He had a little like, it was like one of those cork boards, kept pinning stuff up there, being
with like strings.
Yeah. Jane.
Going between it.
Thor. Valkyrie. Thor. King Thor. Unworthy Thor. Lots of Thor.
Yeah.
Lots of fours. Maybe gores. But yeah, Esad Ribic, fun fact number 1. You'll notice in these issues that Ribic is listed as the artist, and there are multiple color artists, but no inker. To clarify, the artist typically does the sketching of the drawings. The color artist applies color to black and white artwork. The inker goes over the pencil artwork done by the artist to clarify and emphasize line work to bring the best out of the artwork. Ribic used to dislike the way that inkers would work on the faces he drew, so developed a technique involving doing pencils and grayscaling on the computer, then bumping it up to look more like ink in Photoshop, removing the need for an inker. I think this is fascinating.
Yeah. I was going to say this before because it said that he'd worked as an inker on other comics.
Yeah.
But this sort of like watercolor painting that he does feels like it would just bleed outside of like black and white
totally
art outlines and stuff.
He's almost pre-doing the shading, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it almost doesn't surprise me that he does this. Having like read this whole thing and just being like, man, this just feels like he was just painting the whole time. And there was no outline or anything that he was following. It makes so much sense that he did everything himself.
The other thing I love about it is literally has rendered one person jobless. Some inker could have gotten this comic.
Yep.
He's like, I'm going to do it all myself.
Nah.
Yeah.
No need.
Colorist, Dean White. Dean White went to art school. Apparently.
Good. So I guess that's a good start.
Apparently he trained in illustration and fine arts. At age 12, he started working with his dad doing construction. At age 16, got a job storyboarding for local commercials. Yeah, sure.
Going from at 16.
Yeah. Well, he was
storyboarding local commercials.
He was working at 12, which is the more concerning part in construction.
This is bizarre.
Dean. Later, he went on to do storyboarding for some live action and animated projects. He's also done color work on almost every book under the sun, according to Joshy. So, like every comic book ever.
That's a few.
He's listed Punisher Max, Rick Remender. I read that as Remedy, but it's Remender. Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force run, Black Panther, Logan, Kick-Ass, and Jonathan Hickman's Ultimates. So there's some of them, but apparently every comic.
Apparently all of them.
Yeah.
He's just always there.
Yep.
He's also constructing your house.
Yeah.
Right now as a 12-year-old.
As a 12-year-old.
What?
Comics were Dean White's gateway into reading. That's interesting. Apparently he wasn't connecting with the assigned reading he got given in early primary school. So his dad realized that they were boring him. So purchased Dean some comics. What a lovely father.
That's great.
That's really good.
What a way to go.
Yeah, I love that. Apparently that like helped his reading comprehension levels, and that's cool. That's cool. That's to show reading
drastically
comics,
improved over his peers.
Yeah. So that's to show reading comics is reading, everyone.
Yeah.
It forces you to comprehend things.
It's
not just looking at pretty pictures, no matter what everyone says.
Well, some comics are... That was terrifying.
There's no one else in this house.
That was bizarre. Oh my goodness. That scared me too.
Dean White, big fan of Procreate, apparently. First work in comics came from San Diego Comic-Con.
Okay.
Which is cool. It was cool. I wonder if he just like went there as a fan and then got a job offer, or if he was going pitching himself. Maybe he's probably had like a booth or something, I imagine. Someone came up to him.
Yes.
Josh has written it.
Yeah, it says what he did.
Dean was going around showing painted pages to try and get work, doing fully painted sequential artwork. He got 2 job offers at that convention, one to fully paint a backup story in a DC Swamp Thing story,
Cool.
and the other to go into this new company called Image Comics. Wonder where they would end up.
Yeah, never heard of them.
Imprint Top Cow.
Top Cow.
Which did the first Tomb Raider comics, Witchblade and Cyberforce.
Interesting.
So he could paint really well, and they wanted, basically, they're like, if you can learn to do this all on a computer, we'll give you these jobs. And he was like, sweet, I can do it. Comics were just starting to be used in like Photoshop and all those kind of apps at the time. So his first published comic was Weapon Zero, a 1995 miniseries for Top Cow, imprint of Image Comics, as he was still learning Photoshop while working on it. So still learning it and still got one published. Must be pretty talented.
Amazing.
Good on you, Dean.
So good.
But yeah, I mentioned earlier, just shouted it out. Dean White, big fan of Procreate. So he's gone
on an iPad.
On an iPad.
So he's just iPad.
I wonder if he does all his work on an iPad. That's kind of crazy.
That's nuts. That's very cool.
But yeah, so clearly he's moved from being like fully like painted artwork that he was doing at this original San Diego Comic-Con to now just doing it all digitally on his iPad.
Crazy. That's so cool.
Maybe while watching Stranger Things. Don't know why Stranger Things popped into my head. But I was like, he's probably sitting in front of the TV.
That's the
doing
show.
some art at the time.
That's where we want to be right now.
Stranger Things.
Watching Stranger Things.
Is it out?
Today.
Right now.
The last 2 episodes.
We got to wrap up this comic cast. We got
do.
like 10 minutes because I want to go watch Stranger Things.
That's fair.
10 minutes to do the rest of this
That's
comic
fair.
cast.
And we also have a 3-hour stream to do or something.
Fantastic. Fun fact, Dean White won. When Dean White gets allocated a comic, he reads the script and tries to work out where the emotional beats are, along with the big action beats, often assisted by having an initial phone call with the main artist, and then tries to use color to enhance those moments. He thinks of comic coloring like a movie soundtrack, so in the action parts, he'll play a little more colorful and chaotic with the rendering to amp the excitement in those panels, as opposed to more emotional moments where he'll change the coloring and rendering to match and enhance those moments.
Cool. Like it.
Dean looks at coloring comics as juggling 3 ideas. One is that the page is in itself a graphic element that needs to read as one image. Second is that the page is akin to animation, where each panel and scene are one cut to the next and everything is moving. And then third, that it's a stage play. And he's like, all 3 of these have to work together.
That's incredible, but also, where did Joshy find that information?
I think he linked like a podcast, I think.
Yeah,
there's like a full podcast that Dean White has done,
Okay.
like talking about comic coloring and stuff. So
Cool.
I doubt it'll be linked like down in the description, but if you have access to the ETTO Discord, there is a link somewhere in there to that podcast that Joshy has sent. I might even try and make it a bit more prominent because it looks interesting and I might go back and listen to it.
Yeah, cool.
Because this is like super interesting stuff about coloring and stuff.
Absolutely.
But I've always been like, is it weird to only be like your job to be coloring in someone else's art? Like, is that are you you're taking someone else's work and then like turning it into your own, but also trying to do justice to what they've given you?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's this weird thing where that relationship that I've always kind of wondered about. So it's interesting to hear this insight from him of being like, he has like this initial phone call and is like, what did you want from this?
Yeah.
And I'm going to try and adapt that as closely as possible.
Yeah, I had never even thought about the colorist needing as much information as the artist would.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, totally.
Arguably,
It's cool.
Arguably, the color is like, I'm not going to say more important, but like is the thing that people will pay attention more than the actual like inking and like penciling and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I feel like people are going to look at
a lot of
totally.
I think we learned some things today.
I think we learned some things.
Crazy.
But yeah, and you talked about fingers in pies. We only mentioned like writer, artist, colorist in these.
Yeah.
There's like many more fingers in pies of comics. There's letterers, there's editors.
Yeah.
There can be any more number of them. Like there's often like a lot more people that work on like a single issue of a comic.
Yeah.
So it's like there are many, many, many fingers in the pies. We're only like scratching the surface of this.
Yeah.
Anyway, the issue 1 to issue 5. We're just going to go through all of them.
Yeah.
Do we want to do like a brief?
There's so much.
There's a lot. Joshy's given us like some little facts and stuff. Let's go through the storyline. Let's do it a little bit differently. let's like kind of go over the vague storyline of this comic, because as you mentioned, it's structured like a graphic novel.
It is.
Which is like it's very much like it could be one whole cohesive story. But I will shout out off the top the opening line of this comic. It says, "The frost giant had terrorized these people for weeks. It had eaten 3 goats, 4 dogs, and 2 children."
It's a way to start.
That's how it goes.
That's
great. How it starts off. I think that's fantastic. I'm a big mythology nerd. I love my mythologies. I love like the concept of gods, which is funny because as a person, I'm rather agnostic. But I like the concept of them, like the lore behind them, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so immediately, when your comic is called The God Butcher and you start throwing out all this stuff about like this guy who's going around killing all the gods of all the different pantheons, I'm like, yes.
It's intense. Yeah, it's huge.
But yeah, off the top, we immediately see it's kind of like split into 3 different eras. We got that early Thor set around like the Baltic Sea, early like Viking age, where he's literally spending time with Vikings. It's this cool like thing where obviously Thor exists within the Marvel Universe. So he's with the Vikings, which is where they get their mythology of Thor and stuff. I love it. I love it when stuff does that, where it's like,
he existed with them.
Yeah,
that's why they believed in him.
Yeah, and like when they pray to him, he comes down. That's like a regular part of this comic. Is when you pray to a god, they hear it.
They turn up and they're like, "Hey,
it's like it's such a cool concept, and like I don't know. I just love it. I just love it. Anyway, so yeah, we have that Thor who's like an annoying, bullish Thor who thinks he can kind of do everything.
He's very proud.
He's not even worthy of Mjolnir yet.
No, he's just got an axe.
He's using Jarnbjorn, I believe is its name.
Sure.
And I might correct myself later, but I'm pretty sure it's called Jarnbjorn. And then we got that Thor, and then we got the middle Thor.
Yep, which is like modern Thor.
Which is modern Thor. It's like I think it's the one. I think it is basically that Thor. Yeah.
Yeah, because he turns up with Tony Stark at one stage.
Yeah, the one that kind of like carries over into the future Thory.
Future Thory.
And so he's kind of I would say he's almost the focus of these comics, but they have the other 2 interjecting regularly enough that that they have enough of a role in the story that it's mostly split into 3 things. But here's the core focus, because he's investigating. Well, initially he starts at this planet because someone prays for him, and they're like, "Why didn't your gods come?" And they're like, "Oh, we had them once, but they're gone now." We just like stopped believing in them or something. He was like, "Well, no, they exist because in this world, God exists." And then he starts finding out that all these gods have been killed everywhere. And he's like, "Oh my goodness!" Like I only remember like one version of this, which then ties back to the earlier Thor. And so that Thor is kind of going around like investigating, really like the core of like how much Gore is doing, like on how wide a scale Gore is killing all these gods.
Gore is the bad guy too. Gore is the God Butcher.
Yeah.
If we haven't mentioned that already.
Yeah. And so that Thor is kind of doing that investigation, that wider thing. He goes to places where some of these gods had existed, comes up against these goop dogs, I like to call them. Goop dogs.
Goop dogs?
Yeah.
Definitely. What did he call them?
Gooey black dogs. I think they're called black berserkers.
Berserkers, that's the one.
I assume that's the film name they'll
black
use.
Demogorgons.
Yeah. And he keeps coming up against these things, goes to a big library, which is very cool.
Yeah, I loved the interaction when he goes there. And the guy's like, "Didn't think I'd see you back because you didn't seem like much of a reader to me."
Yeah, totally.
Such a fun interaction.
And then he's kind of going around doing all that, investigating Gore. We kind of learn that his only one previous encounter with Gore was in this earlier story we're getting about the younger Thor.
Yeah.
And then we have the old Thor.
Yeah, he's very tired.
Who's king.
Yep.
And he's just chilling.
Kind of.
Well, not chilling.
Very much just
he's missing an arm, for one.
And an eye.
Yep, and an eye.
And I'm pretty sure he just wants to die.
Wow, that was poetic.
There you go.
So good.
Literally rhymed.
Yeah.
He basically says it.
You know what? You know, I was talking about that. We'll bring back the big board. You know, I was talking about that big board that Aaron had.
Yep.
I reckon he did have it because this is the first comic he did. And he's missing the arm that he loses in a much later comic. And then the last comic is called King Thor, which I haven't read, but I wonder if it's at all related to this.
I wonder.
So yeah.
Yeah, nice.
He's got a big board, is what I'm trying to say. I was right.
He's got
Jason, if you have a big board, I want a picture of it.
Please. Send it in.
Send it in the Discord.
We know you're listening.
How do you join the Discord? Pay a bit of money to us, Jason, please.
We've paid you money.
Yeah.
Return the favor.
Kind of.
I have.
I don't know how much royalties you get from Marvel Unlimited. Yeah. I mean, you bought the comics.
It's true, yeah. I own them.
I promised Jason I'll buy them one day. So yeah, we have King Thor, and he's kind of really struggling. We see Asgard is like dilapidated. Great word that I just used. I don't know why I was like...
It's a good one.
Dilapidated. It is a great word. I just went for it. And yeah, overrun by these goop dogs. And I had one particular panel that I particularly remember, which is him he's got like his Mjolnir out, and he's back and he's getting ready to fight, and there's just this swarm of goop dogs in front of him, and I was like, that's super cool.
Yeah, that's like within sort of our first introduction of him, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's at the end of the first issue, which wasn't the end of the first issue for us.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, these comics, they're kind of linked in a way. They start off a bit more separate, I'd say. And over the course of these 5 issues, and even more so as we go a bit beyond this, which we haven't... Well, I've read. Have you read any beyond this?
I'm pretty sure I've read the whole series.
Yeah, okay.
But years ago, so I remember nothing.
But if you read a bit beyond this, they combine even more so. But yeah, definitely it's like they start as very somewhat divergent paths, and then they converge. It's nice like that.
There's sort of crossovers where it's old Thor references something that middle Thor or young Thor did, and then you jump to that point.
It sounds really confusing when we talk about it, but it works in the comic.
They do it very well.
Yeah. It's like, to me, it's never like I'm maybe like once or twice, but like overall, I'm not confused about which Thor we're talking about, like where we are in the storyline. Totally. They make it very clear and stuff.
Early Thor and middle Thor are sometimes the hardest ones when they just jump between them or jump to one, because they look
they do look a little bit
the
similar.
Same.
Yeah.
You just got to look for the axe or the hammer.
Yeah, totally. Totally. But yeah, so they kind of they do their separate things in their separate areas, and then towards the end they all start to converge a bit more as we find out that Gorr is in this big kind of like cathedral almost at these gods. I think they're called like the Timekeepers or something.
Yeah.
Kronux, the Palace of Infinity.
That's right.
Yeah. And so we find out that Gorr's kind of got his base there, and he's got a big blood pool. And then inside that blood pool is time, and he goes into the blood pool, and he travels through time, and we learn that I think the illusion is that that's how he is going, killing all these gods. He's kind of like teleporting himself around, to kill all the gods through this god pool, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And get little bits of his backstory at the end here. I highly advise reading ahead, because Gorr's backstory is super cool. And there's a bit more on it in future issues.
I feel like I say it about every single comic we do.
Yeah.
That I want to like continue reading this, but I never
do.
I remember really enjoying this series, which is why I just kept reading through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so good. I do want to.
I'm gonna say 2 words to motivate you to keep reading. God bomb. That's all.
Yes. I vaguely remember those 2 words.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, sick.
Super cool. So yeah, kind of they all converge, and then at the end we're starting to learn that Gorr has this big plan to like get rid of all the gods, and he's kind of talking big smack on them.
Big smack.
He's like, you guys are bad, but Thor, back when I fought you early on, I remember you taught me a lesson, and they still aren't clear what that lesson is at the end of this, but he's like, for that reason, you get to watch it all happen. While I kill all these other gods, they get like the mercy, but because you taught me that lesson, you get to watch.
You're last.
And that's just cool. He's just cool. Intense. Like, he's edgy. Yeah. He's edgy, and like maybe for some people a bit over the top, but like he's cool.
Yeah.
I think he's a very cool villain. There's like, says some genuinely chilling lines. I think I've got a few of them here. This is not so much a chilling line, but this is the line he said that I really enjoyed. He says, there are 2 kinds of gods, those who do harm, and those who do nothing at all. And I've yet to decide which I find more worthy of my wrath. Like, how cool is that?
Pretty intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so well written. I mean, this character, while we don't learn the entirety of his motivations, it's very clear that, like, across all these issues, they do such a good job of developing his character to the point where it's very clear there's some trauma behind this. Like, he has some reason why he's got such this vengeance, like why he has to kill all these gods. And I think it's very cool. He looks like a badass when he starts getting his goop cloak in the later issues. It's very cool.
It looks awesome. Such a menacing character.
Such a cool menacing character. He's got a nice butt. We see his butt quite a lot.
He's pretty naked.
He's
relatively naked most of the time. Yeah.
He's got weird, like, I think a couple of the listeners mentioned it. He's got weird, like, modesty patches. They're less any kind of clothing, but he's just, like, covered in certain areas.
Yep.
It's very
goop
funny.
Underwear.
Yeah, goop underwear.
Undergoopments.
Yeah.
Undergarments.
Yeah, true.
Undergoopments.
Yeah.
I tried.
You tried. But I appreciated it. But yeah, and at one point he, like, recites basically his god-killing resume. He's like, these are all the gods I've killed. Yeah, he's a very intimidating character, but, like, he's not just that for the sake of being that. Like, he feels like he has some weight behind him. He feels like, as I said, it feels like he's got a reason for doing this, which we, like, start to uncover a bit more.
Yeah.
I can't remember how good that reason is, but the way they set it up here feels really good.
There was some fascinating stuff in there because he doesn't just, like, butcher and kill these guys. He gets them and finds out where other gods are by torturing them.
Yeah.
And there's one part where he says he tortured the god of torture into revealing where his own children were.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's like, that's freaking intense.
Yeah.
Like, the god of torture must be pretty good and pretty aware of, like, torture techniques. And he's basically saying, like, I am better at torturing than these people. These people are, like, have not seen anything that I am capable of in the realm of torture.
Totally.
And he believes that Thor will last half as long as the god of torture, I think. And he lasted, like, 17 days, which is nearly a week longer than the god of torture.
Yeah.
And Thor still didn't give up any information about Asgard. So it's, like, very, very cool. There's a lot of very cool stuff in there, but man, he's intense.
But yeah, I'm very keen. Again, we'll talk about Thor God and Thunder. We'll have a little Thor God of Thunder. No, that's this comic. We'll have a bit of Love and Thunder. There's too much Thor. There's too much thunder. There's too many Thors. There's too many gores.
Too much ore. Too much ore in everything.
Too much.
Thor 4.
But yeah, no, I'm really keen to see how he takes on this role because, like, again, there's so much within this 5 issues. There is so much depth and lore created around this character that I'm almost concerned about how you put that into a 2-hour-long film with a lot of other things in it.
Yeah, made by Taika Waititi.
What? A few other things I want to shout out before we, like, jump into viewer comments, because that's, like, the overarching storyline. Sorry if it felt a bit disjointed, but it's like the overall story is a bit disjointed. It's not like, because of the way it's set with these 3 different eras, it makes sense when you're reading it, but you have to, like, piecing it all together into one cohesive plot is a little bit tough.
I guess it's the basic overview, if that was too confusing, I guess, is like, young Thor pissed off a god killer, god slaughterer. And so that guy went and just started killing all of the gods.
But he was killing gods before that.
He was Yeah. So he pissed him off more and was just like, all right, you're last.
Yeah.
And he just ended up torturing Thor in a way of killing all these gods that he knew that Thor would probably come after him.
Yeah.
And then Thor is just chasing him down for a while.
Yeah.
Until he tracks him down and ends up time traveling to old Thor.
Yeah.
And fighting with old Thor.
Yeah.
As well. And that's all we get, basically, in this.
Yeah.
So, dude killing gods, Thor is after him.
Yeah.
And he's hyper aware of Thor's existence.
Yeah.
By leaving him to last.
Yeah, that's a fantastic summary.
That's pretty much it.
And I'm just going to cut out the past 30 minutes.
Nice.
No, I'm not. 'Cause it was good chat. It was good chat. But no, that's a pretty good summary of it overall.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a few more things I want to shout out before we jump into viewer comments.
Mm-hmm.
So when they go to the library in issue 3,
Yep.
I don't remember what issue it was for us, but
No.
somewhere in the middle there,
Yeah.
he starts finding out about all these gods that like have gone missing. There's this hall of the missing gods or whatever that are actually all dead gods.
That was cool. Yeah, I like that.
And again, shout out to the shit-talking librarian who just is constantly giving Thor shit about the fact that he's here. He has a Mjolnir torch in it, which I thought was very cool at first.
Does he? Oh, I missed that.
He used Mjolnir as a torch.
That's great.
But then, they start listing off some of the gods. Joshy's written them down for me because I didn't catch them all, but we've got some crazy names here. The Oaken King and Sequoia Queen of Gekglavenglade, the Garden Eternal. Apparently entirely fictional. The War Fairies of Wendigorge. That's a fictional one, but that's one I could have seen not being fictional. That seems like
Wendigorge sounds familiar.
Yeah, is that... Wendigo. It sounds like Wendigo.
But what's the
Wundagore?
Wundagore. That's the one I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
And then Coral Immortals of Cataract.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joshy says, and Googling them got me a lot of pictures of eyes.
That's great.
That's great. And then the main one, who we see in the Thor Love and Thunder trailer, Thalagar the Behemoth, only exists in this comic, and Joshy mentions that he thought it would have been a tiny reference to a past comic. I thought it was as well, because I hadn't gone back and checked this, but I thought, it was probably referencing some like 1984 comic where Thalagar the Behemoth shows up at one point.
I hope we see a bit more of him, like a flashback or something.
Yeah, totally. It'd be so cool.
Love and Thunder.
Such a cool design for a character.
It is. And the panel is just perfect in the film.
Yeah.
They show it like it just looks exactly like the panel from the comic.
It's almost like they should pay the people who made the comic.
Almost. They almost should, yeah. Or at least put them in the credits or something.
Maybe a little bit. But the one thing I did want to shout out about Thalagar that Joshy didn't mention, which they do, is in like the little context box about him, is that I think they say it is said that he wrestles black holes.
Yeah,
and I was
for fun.
And I'm like, that's the coolest thing I have read on a comic book page.
Yep.
In a comic that is full of cool things.
Yeah,
that's the coolest thing.
It's pretty sick.
Imagine a god wrestling a black hole.
A black hole,
so cool.
Just for funsies.
Yeah, just for funsies.
So cool.
So Joshy gave us a bunch of background on some of the gods that I mentioned. There's a bunch of gods thrown out. We can't go through all of them because, this has been a loosey-goosey one and we're already getting on for time.
We are.
But he did mention this is another fake god that they brought into this, but that we do get a bit more of in this comic. Shadrach, the one with the tentacles, who I initially thought was related to Gore. Even when I first read this, and then we found out he isn't. And I thought he was again because he looks very similar to Gore.
He does, yeah.
Very similar design. He's Shadrach of the Diamond Moons of Agogo. Shadrach, god of bombs and fireballs, lived in the Diamond Moons of Agogo with his pantheon. He and his friends enjoyed casting bombs and fireballs into space to watch the stars explode. Apparently he's a creation of Jason Aaron and Ribic, which is cool. Appears in some Mighty Thor issues later on. Okay. And apparently becomes the god of daffodils and documentation, and then later the god of peace and persimmons, and then later the god of incense and incarceration.
That's great.
This is a character I see Taika Waititi using.
Absolutely, yeah. I love that it's always like two of the same letter.
Totally.
God of like daffodils and documentation, peace and persimmons, and incense and incarceration. It's always double lettered like that. That's
totally. And then the other thing I have to shout out, Joshy gave us a couple goat fun facts because goats are mentioned in the first issue of this comic.
They are, yeah.
And I couldn't go through this entire thing without mentioning these goat fun facts.
Sure.
So, goat fun fact number 1. On page 1, Thor eats a bunch of goat meat.
Does?
Goat meat is internationally regarded as a lean red meat with reduced fat and cholesterol content. Preferred cuts of goat meat vary depending on geographic area. Goat meat has a somewhat darker red color, coarser texture, and characteristically different flavor and aroma compared with lamb or mutton.
Okay.
There you go, Josh.
Interesting.
Did you know that about goat meat?
I guess that's fun.
That's fun. It's a fun fact.
It's so fun.
You want to hear another fun fact
I
about
hope
goats?
it's fun. I hope it's just as fun, if not more fun.
Yep. There are tales of goats in Norse culture. Now, this is going to be fun to read. Examples of goats in Norse culture include Heidrun, a goat in Norse mythology, consumed the foliage of the tree Leiradur, which the pronunciation is after this, but that was my go at like just giving it a go. It's pronounced Lyra. Lyra.
Right. Oh yeah, that's freaking weird. It's one of the like A and E in one letter.
Yeah.
We don't have that. We don't know how that works.
Heidrun produces mead, apparently. A goat that produces mead. Very cool.
Okay.
Number 2, the second tale of goats in the Prose Edda, which is actually something that a lot of Norse mythology is sourced from.
Yeah. So I'm currently, I am in the middle of reading the book Norse Mythology
by Neil Gaiman. Which is adapts a lot of that.
So he's I think he said that he like in this book. Sorry, this is tangent.
But it's a good book. I've read a little bit of it.
Yeah. So at the start, he basically says that it's based on the Edda, like Prose Edda, and something else, ETTO probably. It's not
Prose ETTO.
ETTO. And I remember him saying that he didn't read anybody else's leading into this.
Yeah.
He just wrote the stories that he remembered so that he never copied the way that someone else portrayed those stories.
Yeah.
And it didn't sound the same as someone else's. He's just like, this is how I remember the story, so I'm just going to write that down. Yeah. Which is a cool way to do it. Norse Mythology, good book.
Good book. Norse Mythology, it's a good... From what I've read of it, I had never got through the whole thing, but from what I've read of it, it's a very good adaptation of what is absurdly dense and stupid mythology. From what I've read of like actual Norse mythology, like the original stuff, it's stupid. Like it's insane. It's stupid. It's super wordy. Makes no sense. And so Neil Gaiman's done us all a service and actually adapted it all.
Now I'm getting into this. Some of the super interesting stuff about it, because he writes about this as well, is that like Vikings and stuff couldn't write. So the Christians were like, can we write this down for you? Can you tell us these stories and we'll write them down so that we can preserve your culture in history? Because otherwise we would have lost it. Yeah. And a lot of them have been lost because the Christians just wrote down what they could or what they were told. But there's a whole bunch of stories and stuff that were never told. And so there's missing parts in the whole like Norse mythology in general. And like there's a bunch of like contradicting stories and things like that that, you know, potentially could have had linking stories that would make the contradictions make sense, but they've been lost to time. The Europeans at the time did their best to write down what they could, but a bunch of it's been lost, which is also just fascinating.
Yeah, but I think it's possibly, again, we're back on the tangent, but I don't mind. I think it's possibly why Norse mythology has been adapted so much is because there's not like there's no Bible. Like there's the Prose Edda and there's like other sources for it, but like there is not a like.
I think it's the other one's like the Poetic Edda.
So
one of them's all poems and one of them's just stories. I think those are the two.
Totally. And there's not that core literature that you can like that is there that is like filling in all those gaps. So people, it's almost like gives more people more license. Kind of adapt it, make Thor into like a comic book character, or Thor in like God of War or whatever, like Thor in all the random stuff he shows up in.
So much with it.
But anyway, goats.
Back to goats.
The Prose Edda has stories about Thor's personal goats, Tangrisnir and Tangnjorster.
Nice.
Gnjorster. Oh man, they have some words.
It's nuts. It's so cool.
Yeah. The stories about these two goats, apparently after they get eaten, they have their bones laid out, and then Thor resurrects them with his hammer Mjolnir the next day to then be eaten again.
Oh.
That's less sick, isn't it? Yeah. And then apparently he once stayed with peasants and shared the meat of these ever-replenishing goats. Then one of the children human children broke open one of the leg bones to suck out the marrow. And when Thor resurrected the goat the next day, the goat had a permanent limp.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So shout out to goats.
That's great.
Yeah.
What a
And
funny
in Marvel
thing.
Comics, these goats are called Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder. Bit easier to say.
You're right.
But they will be showing up in Thor Love and Thunder, Thor 4 with Gore.
Yeah, I hope so.
They are.
They are?
They're the goats in the
Good.
trailer.
Oh, right.
You know the goats
Sick.
that go
Yeah.
yeah.
I wonder if he's going to do that.
What?
That story's going
Suck
to be
out the marrow?
Or someone will, or if he'll like resurrect them, eat them and resurrect them
Maybe.
throughout the whole movie.
I feel like it's a bit less likely.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It'd be great though. It's a fun story. I like it.
Totally.
That was a fun fact.
That was a fun fact.
I like it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joshy.
You didn't find the stuff about goat meat fun?
It's
It's got a somewhat darker red color
yeah.
with a coarser texture.
Gosh, how could I forget?
And a characteristically different flavor and aroma compared with lamb or mutton. How is that not fun,
It's
Josh?
so fun. I am
Um,
intrigued. I do kind of want to try lamb. Goat
Goats.
now.
See, it's fun.
It's pretty
We
fun.
brought you back around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got me. You got me.
Got
Alright.
you. Anyway, that's all on Thor 2012 God of Thunder issues 1 to 5. That's our thoughts. That's our thoughts.
It's our goats.
Plus some fun facts in there from Joshy,
Mhm.
which we did confirm are in fact fun.
They were actually pretty fun.
because you didn't think they were initially,
You
but
bloody-
they were fun.
You bloody got me.
They were fun. That is definitely our loosest issue rundown we've
Mhm.
ever done.
Yep.
This is maybe the loosest comic cast we've ever done, which I didn't think was possible before today.
We've had some loose ones.
We've had some loose
It's been
ones.
fun though. This has been fun.
It's been a lot of fun. We're not done yet.
Not done. We got some viewer comments.
We got some viewer comments. Oh, when are we gonna do this Halo stream? It's fine. You guys will have seen it at this point. The Halo stream's happened. Who knows? Anyway, viewer comments time. You know what? Joshy's had a lot of talk.
Mhm.
So let's go to someone else first, and then we'll go back to Joshy.
Go Jade.
No, we actually have to go
No?
Dolphin Pants first. 'Cause
Dolphin?
I just realized Jade referenced Dolphin Pants, so we're going bottom up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Bottom up.
Bottoms up.
Best way to go.
Yeah. So
Always.
Dolphin Pants. This month's Dolphin Pants comments are brought to you by your local library. They have books.
Whoa.
I know, it's very cool. I was going to read through Marvel Unlimited, but the pure nostalgia of spending afternoons in the library as a child hit me, and I signed up to my library, and to my surprise, they had this month's Comic Cast comic available to borrow.
That's so cool.
So for the first Comic Cast since the Life of Captain Marvel pre-Comic Cast in March 2019, which isn't on YouTube, it's on Spotify, ? I am reading along physically. Did you capture all that?
I
Did you
did.
understand all that?
I did. Yeah. That's awesome.
Basically what it says is Dolphin Pants borrowed a book and is
It did.
reading
Mm-hmm.
the book.
That's
That-
pretty good.
Yeah. it's
Good
very
on you, man.
Anyway, Dolphin Pants says, straight out the bat, this isn't an art style for me.
The faces were something.
I can't explain it. It's just very ugly to me to look at this.
Yeah.
I think these are great. They're going to be up on the screen right now for everyone.
They are definitely something. Whenever it's wide-eyed,
It's the wide eyes. It's definitely the wide eyes.
any characters. Sorry, I'm just looking at Thor's mouth here. It's a meme. That is angry cat's mouth.
It is. I mean, it's the... Like, that's what I'm
It's
telling
so
you.
funny.
Like, Asad Ribic does a lot of this expression stuff. You're right. It is the wide eyes, which are also in the Eternals comics he
It's
does.
so wide. It's so intense.
I enjoy them for some reason. I think it's because they're so different to what I normally see in comics.
Yeah.
You normally see... We've talked about this before.
The mouths are so wide as well.
Less detailed, more expressionless faces.
Yeah.
Dolphin Pants says, I would like to add on from what Joshy said, which we'll get to in a
We'll
bit,
get there.
about variants to make a point that issue 1 also received a blank variant and this cover, which I am fond of. That's this one, which is what we actually see if we didn't read the versions we read.
Yep.
If we read the original comics versions, they have this image at the start of all the issues, and it has like a little synopsis of what's going on with that version of Thor at the start of each issue, which also helps you catch up in those issues.
Yes.
Which again reinforces that the Infinity version didn't nail it.
No.
But then there's also this other variant here, which is sick, by Oliver Koipel, who was the penciler for House of M. So we're really coming back to House of M today.
Of course.
And also penciled the Amazing Spider-Man Spider-Verse comics.
Cool.
Now, I do love a good Thor comic, but do I love this one? Yes.
Good.
Good
So
to
even
hear.
though the art style wasn't your thing,
Yeah.
glad you still enjoyed the story.
Will he dock points for the art style?
Sorry?
Will he dock points for the art style?
Ooh.
We'll find out.
Ooh, we will.
The time stuff might be a bit off-putting to some, but I find it a very good narrative device, which would be freaking amazing if they did it in the MCU. Hashtag bring King Thor to the MCU.
Imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure that hashtag will catch on.
Mm-hmm.
Gore's introduction is unapologetically brutal and terrifying. It really staged him as a worthy foe for Thor. I agree.
With Thor?
No. Gore as a character is fantastic. I really hope he's done justice in the film. We agree. Thor also very well developed in this run, all the different periods of his life. I agree. Now, Shadrach is a character I feel like they can use in the film for a sudden tone shift. Yep, we mentioned that.
Yes.
Make him a lovable goofball that Thor teams up with. Just have Gore butcher him. True. I do feel like maybe his character is overlapped with Korg a bit.
It's yeah. I was about to say that.
Yeah.
This is going to be a New Zealand guy.
Yep. Probably. Also a little sneaky Iron Man to keep Josh interested and Ben annoyed and Will ... hungry. We won't know about Will because he's not here.
No.
I was definitely annoyed. I was actually going to mention it to Josh before this, but I'm going to say it now. Why the hell is Iron Man in every bloody comic we read? I swear to God.
It was very random that he showed up at all.
He should not have been.
It was so strange.
It makes no sense. Anyway, I tried to pick a favorite issue, but damn it, I just enjoyed every bit. Nice one. I'm glad you did.
Good.
A favorite moment, though, well, it's a tie between these three moments. So the first moment is a combined one. It's Gore being like, I've killed a bunch of different gods of this, gods of that, gods of all these kind of things. What are you the god of? Classic line from Thor Ragnarok.
Yep.
And then Thor says thunder, and then there's big thunder. It's
so
very
cool. Yeah.
And then the other one of the other moments was Gore with his goop cloak, his big goop cloak in the pool of blood. Which is also very cool.
Dance.
And then the other moment, which I think this is possibly one of my favorite moments, just for the imagery of it. I don't know, it's very cool, but it's Thor with his axe in like the back of Gore's head. And it's Gore, and he's just like lifted Gore up with his sheer weight. It's just like a beautiful picture.
Yeah, I don't think I'd noticed until I saw these two. I didn't notice that he'd cut off Gore's arm. I thought he just sliced up Gore's back. But he cut off Gore's arm, and in the previous panel of Dolphin Pants' stuff, Gore has a completely black arm, probably only made of goop.
Yeah, totally.
Because Thor cut off his arm?
Yeah.
So he's got a goop arm.
That's the lesson.
I never noticed that.
That's the lesson.
You taught me how to make a goop arm.
But we understand. No, that's the lesson that Gore's talking about. That he cut off his arm.
Yeah.
There you go.
And
I didn't even realize that. I literally thought his axe is in the back of the head there.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. I didn't even notice the arm flying off. I just thought that was cool.
That's what I mean. Like, it's only now that
I've read this comic twice.
It's so cool. Now he's got a goop arm.
Thanks, Dolphin Pants.
Love it.
Now, the most important question, will I keep reading? And it's a strong yes. The next issue is literally all about Gore with 2 R's, not R-E. Thor isn't even in it.
Is that comic at your local library?
Maybe.
The next volume?
Possibly.
Hopefully.
I'm going to take advantage of this physical release to show you some fancy extras. They include such as Ribbick's sketchbook.
Oh, nice.
Which I'll chuck up on the screen for all you viewers.
Yeah, those are cool.
But for you listeners, there are just, a bunch of sketches of Gore, of King Thor, of younger Thor, more Gore, more Thor, all the Thors and the Gores everywhere. And Dolphin Pants says, finally my rating, 4 different time periods out of 5. The story was incredible, but the art just hurt me mentally to look at. That's fair.
Nice.
That's fair.
Nice.
And then let's do...
Jade?
Jade next, yes. So Jade says, when I first saw the art style, I was initially concerned because I was worried this was going to be dull or depressing. Fortunately, I loved the writing, the use of flashbacks was inspired, the mystery was intriguing, and there's enough humor in there to stop me from melting with despair. I mean, look at this and tell me it's not funny. Yeah, Thor is very grumpy reading a burning scroll.
And he's also still on fire.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where the fire came from.
Yeah, that's true.
The fire variant issue.
Thor on fire.
Thor on fire.
I know Dolphin...
Reading a scroll.
I know Dolphin wasn't enamored with the art, but I chuckled every time Thor made a what the fuck face when he was uncertain or thinking or surprised.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dolphin, this face is perfect. And Jade has linked the same picture.
It's the same picture. It's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah. There's a few faces. The first like noticeable one is the one where it's just the head.
Yeah.
It's floating in the water.
Yeah.
It's just this horrified head.
he does such a good job with faces. I don't know, Dalton Pants. I don't agree. I think they're fantastic. Jade says, I've actually enjoyed this way more than Joshy. We probably should have done Joshy first.
Yeah, maybe.
However, I'm on the fence as to whether I'll continue, as we already know from the other Thor comic roughly what happens in between. I'm seeing that this story sets up Thor for future stories. The butchering of immortals without anyone even noticing disturbs Thor. You can see him starting to question his place in the universe, ready for a certain Avenger to say 3 little words and render Thor unworthy. That's Nick Fury, for those who don't remember the last comic cut. King Thor has only one arm, did you notice? Although he is also wielding Mjolnir, so I guess he is worthy again within 900 years.
Yeah. He did it.
He did. He got back there. Who would have thought? We don't know yet what has motivated Gore, but how much do you want to bet that the answer is something along the lines of, my family died and the gods did nothing? That's pretty spot on, but it's a cool story. You should read it.
Yeah.
I may be motivated to read further, but at this stage, I'm content to pause here. That's fair. I mean, yeah, you basically nailed it. That's like pretty spot on with what it is, but like I think his justification for it is like, that's it's fair. Kill a lot of gods. My family died. Kill all the gods.
Yeah.
But no, it's a cool issue that I would recommend reading if you've got the time.
Is it just the next one?
I think it's issue 6. Yeah, I think Dolphin Pants mentioned it's all about Gore.
Yeah.
So.
That might spur you on to read more.
Yeah.
If you just read one more issue.
Yeah.
You may be spurred on.
Yeah.
Give it a go.
Got a couple random thoughts from Jade as well. We know that any comic that purports, great word, to kill off Thor is doing a fake out because we know King Thor must eventuate. It's kind of sad that everyone is dead in King Thor's time, but it's 900 years in the future, so it's expected that most of the Marvel friendos will be a bit dead by then. The comic implies that all immortal beings in Earth mythologies are in fact real, or at least they were until they were murdered. That's true.
It's true.
Gore's cape thingy is giving off major Venom vibes.
Yep.
You might see why if you keep reading.
Interesting.
Do you want me to go into it? Should I go into it? In deeper Marvel lore.
Yeah.
Okay, so his sword, which is called the Necro Sword, which they go a bit more into in later issues.
Yep.
Is actually made of the symbiote. Like it's the sword of the symbiote. And then Null, who's the god of the symbiotes, who they did a big event for a couple of years ago, that ends up being his sword, the Necro Sword.
Right.
It's like, yeah, so all these goop stuff is actually symbiote stuff.
Cool. So it is basically Venom.
This was basically them like laying the initial seeds for that Null event that happened.
Cool.
Yeah. So if you saw a bunch of like Venom variant covers, a couple, I think it was like end of 2019, early 2020, that was all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gore is actually related to that.
Right.
There was a fair amount of Gore butt in these comics, and there were a few panels where I wondered if Gore was wearing a C-string. I assume this means we'll see Gore's pasty butt in the movie. We're seeing Thor's pasty butt in the movie.
We certainly are.
FYI, this level of Gore was fine for me. Work out which one was which. I rate this 4 C-strings out of 5. Josh, can you look up what a C-string is while I bring up Josh's comment?
Don't want to. But
Yes, you do. You do want to do it.
So nervous. Specific type of thong or brand of women's shorts.
A specific type of thong. Oh, he's going into the images.
Ah, okay.
Oh, I see.
Gotcha.
I see what's going on there.
Yeah, so it doesn't have the hip part.
Yeah, it
just doesn't go around at the hips.
What? Yeah, no, he does have one of them.
Hold. How does that work? I don't understand. Don't answer that. It's fine. Let's move on.
Joshy, rewinding to Jason Aaron's 2012 God of Thunder comic, the launch of his reign over the various Thor books that lasted 7 years, after bounding through the sequel comics, The Mighty Thor, the 2014 and 2015 runs, it's like watching the Eccleston run of Doctor Who after devouring the Tennant run. Yeah, that's kind of true.
Sure.
They've had the same head writer crafting the story's voice, and this earlier work is fine, but one knows they've already devoured the juicier, richer narrative material when the writer is more assured and confident in taking those big hammer swings that are chiseling the detail out of the narrative granite. Oh, these issues are the early raindrops warning of the emotionally heart-drenching downpour that the beautiful storm cloud that is the mighty Thor will deliver. But the scent of post-rain petrichor, ever so satisfying, is so distant at this point in the narrative. If read chronologically, the reader wouldn't be amiss if they turn back to retrieve their proverbial umbrella or just traverse elsewhere, allowing the storm cloud to pass unexperienced entirely. You are juicing these up for us now.
Wow.
I know he's been egged on by us.
Yeah. He's trying.
Yeah.
He's trying to make us mad.
And it's good. I like it. Reading comic books featuring Thor Odinson, I struggle to engage with the character. not dissimilar to books from the competition featuring the Kal-El Superman. I'll admit much of comic reading is personal preference, and what I'm drawn to are big, bright, bold characters with layers and nuances that leap off the page into my heart, a character focus that Marvel is renowned for, and an edict championed by Stan Lee during the 20th century. Thor Odinson feels antithetical to that concept, coming across as almost entirely bland, flat, and shallow. Savage.
Antithetical.
This works in
Antithetical.
the... Antithetical. Antithesis. You don't...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard... Yeah,
it's a good word. Good word, Joshy.
Very good word.
This works in the context of the story being explored about the worthlessness and unworthiness of the gods, but then I struggle to care about the lead protagonist. Jason Aaron tries to give Odinson a more dimensionality than any other writer handling Thor before him, but it's watching a glassblower attempt to shape a piece of glassware that is already cooled. Oof.
Oh my goodness, dude.
That's savage.
Jeez.
They can blow and attempt to reshape the object all they want, but the cool, unyielding glass will merely crack, if not shatter, rather than allow itself to be reworked into a better piece.
Interesting.
Sounds like your mind's made up.
Yeah.
A stoic, traditional-style protagonist can be offset by surrounding them with the lively, bustling network of colourful characters and a lived-in universe, but Aaron decides to keep Thor, shown across various points in his timeline, largely isolated from that network.
He brought in Tony Stark. I think that was a pretty good move.
No. During these 5 issues, whether it's young Thor surrounded by the swarm of Vikings that are indistinguishable from each other, melding more into a mood than any distinct characters, to present-day Thor chasing Gorr the God Butcher across enormous empty expanses of dead worlds, and the future King Thor sat resolute and broken. There's a wash of soporific uniformity across the book, both in the writing and the artwork, so no moment is allowed to erupt out. So even a personality like Iron Man, their appearance ever so fleeting, feels dull to match the tone of the rest of the material. And he's always dull.
Never.
The closest I came to caring about somebody was the Lord Librarian, so sardonically snarky and alive that I wanted them promoted to be the book's titular lead protagonist to escape this muted broodiness.
Wow. Jeez.
I would like a book on the Lord Librarian.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's write that comic, Josh.
Let's do that. You and me, we got this.
Yeah. Ribbick's artwork is identical to earlier work in the 2004 Loki miniseries and the future work on King Thor. His painted style is ideally suited for portrait artwork on covers. The combined covers of issue 1 and 2 are worthy of hanging in any art gallery. In interviews, Ribbick has less than subtly alluded to disliking a large percentage of comic art. And I feel this attitude translates into his in-book work, where I felt myself constantly losing focus and glossing over pages because they weren't grabbing the reader the way the comic art is meant to, with Ribbick's black shading not feeling dark enough and his colours very rarely being allowed to pop. I like that. I like that the colours don't pop. It feels tonally correct for this comic to me.
For this series, yeah, definitely.
I really like it.
It is a broody, intense story.
However,
it shouldn't be too poppy.
I understand. Clearly, Josh, this is not the kind of art he goes to comics for. So I understand why he's talking about that. I just personally think it's like the perfect art choice for the story they're trying to tell.
I definitely feel like it works.
Issue number 5 feels like the assisting color artist has been given looser reins than prior issues, as pages 1 and 15, which I don't have, but they might be up on the screen, immediately my favorites out of this entire read, because the glow of the time-traversing bloodbath captivates in a way that little else in these pages manage. That's true. That is the one pop of color in the entire comic,
the
basically.
Blood.
My preference aligns more with Cantwell's 2020 Iron Man run, where Cafu and Alex Ross do painted style covers, but then adopt a still beautiful but more comic art style for the in-book work. Fair enough. I haven't... Oh, actually, I know the covers. I see what he means, because I know the covers of that 2020 Iron Man run. You've been collecting them.
I probably got...
They're really cool covers.
Oh, like really bright?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really
like just neon colors.
Bright, but like painterly at the same time.
Yeah. I remember those.
But yeah, no. So I see what you're getting at there, Joshy. On the promise of the origin of Gorr, I will read issue 6. However, adding some shade to the cowl of the one-note knockoff Voldemort with shadow powers that they've been thus far. That's a. I mean, if you don't like the character, that's a good summary of the character.
Yeah.
But I'm unsure that a continuation of this glacially paced story is going to garner further interest. I rate Thor: God of Thunder, 2012, number 1 to 5, one warm heart of an elder god out of 4 elder gods of Earth.
Wow.
Because Gorr steals the heart of an elder god, which we didn't mention.
Yeah.
Oh, and just on that, I promise we're going to wrap up this podcast soon. But just on that, there was one bit of context when he goes to the place to steal that heart.
Yep.
It says, I wrote, there is no cooler context setting than 14 billion years ago. Full stop. The void. Full stop.
So good.
That's like, you can't get much better than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a good look. It was a wordy read, and they always are, Joshy.
Mm-hmm.
But you do one thing well. You probably do more than one thing well. You do one thing well, and that's that you back it up with your own justification.
It's true.
I respect that, even if I disagree.
We always understand why you come at these angles.
And we frequently disagree.
We do. Nearly every time.
Yeah. We have one final viewer who decided to comment.
We do. Not a common viewer that would come and like write in.
No.
Actually give us something to read out. It's
no.
not
So uncommon that I didn't even put it in the document.
You didn't.
Wasn't worthy of it.
No. Not worthy.
This is from a viewer called Leaf.
Yeah.
Josh will get that. No one else will.
I certainly do.
Will. No one else will.
No one else will. I was hoping that we just wouldn't. But that's fine.
I didn't.
What do you... Josh? Yeah, sorry. Yes. Leaf.
Leaf says, man, fuck Taika Waititi. Why did he have to make a more enjoyable Thor than the vague previous attempts at adapting this comic's tone? The Shakespearean ramblings of these issues are wonderful, and the art oozes myth. It's also wild that they create tension across the three coexisting eras. Good shit all around. Bad shit that will not see stuff like this on screen for another decade and a reboot or two.
Yep. In saying that as well, Leaf, like the way that he sort of said... like oozes myth, I guess.
Yeah.
That is, and it feels like another reason why this art works so well, because it seems like mythical paintings.
Yeah, it feels like that. I think you're right. It feels like it's out of an encyclopedia almost.
Yeah. Or like
which is why it works.
The Nordics painted these things,
which is why I think it works so well for Eternals as well, because they're based off.
Yeah.
So I think. Put him on the right comic, and it's perfect for it.
Yeah.
So I think they're doing a good job of picking Esad Ribic,
nice.
the Croatian artist for these comics. But yeah, Leaf, who again, we don't know a lot about him, but brought up a good point about the film, which I did say we'd talk about.
Yep.
A little bit more. My thing with this film, going into it next week, having just read this comic fresh.
Yep.
This is like. It's like a lot more gore and blood for one. A lot more gore.
No, there's a lot more gore.
Than any Marvel Studios property. They may be getting a bit riskier with it. Like Moon Knight had a bit of that stuff in it.
Yeah, true.
But there's a lot more of that, and it's a very like broody, almost emo comic.
It's such a different interpretation of Thor to what we have in the MCU,
which I love. And Leaf is right, where it's like, it's definitely more of what they tried to go with those initial Thor films. Totally think they missed the mark.
Yeah.
And I kind of, in another world, I wish we got those Thor films, but I'm also happy with the direction Taika Waititi took it, because I think it's an interesting direction. It's something a bit fresh for the character, who was very much not in a good spot. But yeah, it's fascinating to me, going back and reading this, that they're adapting this story into this film. It feels like it doesn't totally fit anything from Thor Ragnarok or any of Taika Waititi's work. But then again, I think about it and I'm like, well, like he's done stuff like Jojo Rabbit where he deals with very heavy subject material with a lot of nuance, while at the same time pulling in that like classic humor that he's really good at doing.
Yeah.
And so... fascinated. My main thing is I'm fascinated by this film and how it pans out, because I'm sure it will be good. I have faith that it'll be good, but it is trying to do so much. It's trying to tell this story and the Jane story and other stories that it's set up in previous films in like 2 hours, and doing that all of that justice at once.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot. It's going to be a lot. The reviews so far, like the stuff that's come out is like pretty positive, right? I feel like I'd trust that.
Yeah.
I feel like if it was a mess,
yeah,
critics would say it's a mess.
That's true.
People would say that it's a mess. They would generally pan things faster than they would not pan things.
Yeah.
So I feel confident that it's going to be pretty good. It's hard to imagine how it is. Is it only 2 hours?
Well, it can't be more than like 3.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I'm just wondering if it's like, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever. But yeah, it sounds like there's a lot to do.
It's also so fascinating to me now that we've read this and the Jane stuff, like both recently for this comic cast, and now we're about to see the movie, and they're combining those two stories together, which are quite vastly different stories. Yeah. And Joshy mentioned they're like, one is so different to the other, and he likes it because of that. And it's like, yeah, it's fascinating. I'm excited. I'm nervous.
Gotta be something, yeah.
I'm keen.
Yeah.
What else am I keen for? Another comic cast. Hopefully a bit shorter than this one. Maybe a bit more tight.
Yes.
Maybe we'll have a third chair to keep us
perhaps
tighter. Or maybe it'll get even looser. Who knows?
Who knows?
On a scale of loose to tight, what do you rate this comic?
Ooh. Baggy. Yeah.
I read it. Tightish. Next month, which was what I was actually segueing to, but then we segued back. As I said, loose as all heck. You guys are loving this, I'm sure.
No structure.
No structure at all. But next month there will be structure because we will be reading She-Hulk. It's all about structure and law.
Yeah.
And structure. Oh dear.
Nice.
I'm going to say... I said I had it prepared earlier, but I don't. Maybe I do. I think we're going to read... well, I know... You know what?
Do I?
You know what?
I don't.
What comic do you think we're going to read next month?
She-Hulk.
Nice, did it. What year?
I don't...
2014. Oh my god, you nailed it.
Yes! 2014!
Yep, 2014.
Never ends.
Issues 1 to Thor.
Really?
We're back to 2014.
Yes.
Issues 1 to Thor.
For She-Hulk.
But Thor, this is She-Hulk 2014, issues 1 to 4. So Will suggested
2014.
We do 2005.
Yep.
Because he's reading that at the moment.
Issue 1 to 4.
Had a quick look at it. Looks good. But then Joshy also mentioned a later arc from this 2014 run.
Okay.
No, I had a quick look then. I was like, that looks good. But I don't really want to jump in
at the end.
Like halfway through.
Yep.
So let's just jump in at the start of it. And it seems like it's a good, like, rollicking lawyer / She-Hulk story where she's doing a bunch of different cases and stuff.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
We're going to do that.
That sounds fun.
That'd be a lot of fun. This has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed the heck out of this, even though it's been wild. I hope you guys have. I hope you enjoyed listening. And we'll catch you around the place, up and down the street, on the Twitches, in the Patreons, each to their own.
That's right. On the Twitches in like probably 10, 15 minutes.
Probably soon.
We need to start
We've got to order food as well.
We do have to do that.
I'm really hungry. I purposely didn't eat before I came here. So we're going to go.
We're going to go. We're going to do it. All right. Bye, guys.
Peace out.
Enjoy. Love you. This has been this.
It has been this.
It certainly has.